This preacher was so confident he had the cure that he went on public TV and offered it to the public. And we'll talk about the 1,500 or so people who basically requested the cure and ultimately what happened in the aftermath. And I have to be honest, situations like this always get me worked up and annoyed because it's preying on weak Christians for the most part. And the Bible gives us so many insights all over the Bible about how people try to make merchandise of us. So before we get into the 1,500 or so people who ultimately requested the cure and what happened, you should understand that when this individual first basically went on TV and was broadcasting this particular cure, he ultimately, not soon after this, was ultimately given a cease and desist basically from the FDA in America. They were basically contacted and said, look, stop promoting this particular offering because basically you're misinforming the public. From the moment you're hearing this, you should know, obviously, this was ultimately going to go downhill. But it gets worse. And I want to show you now just a short clip so you can get some of the flavor of what ultimately was being said at the time to basically get people excited and enticed to basically request these bottles. Take a look.
This influenza that is now circling the globe, you're saying that silver solution would be effective.
Well, let's say it hasn't been tested on this strain of the, but it's been tested on other strains of the, and has been able to eliminate it within 12 hours.
Yeah.
Totally eliminate it, kills it, and deactivates it.
Yeah.
They're saying in that particular clip things along the lines of, look, this can cure people. There's evidence in some circles of it curing people within 12 hours. Now, think about this from a Christian perspective. And this goes, obviously, like I said before, beyond Christianity. Now, think about this. For anybody who was afraid, anybody who was going through a hard time throughout this whole situation, hearing that, you know what, this particular concoction can ultimately heal you potentially in 12 hours, why would you not basically follow through in this particular situation? One of the lawsuits, because there are multiple lawsuits, which was levied at this particular professing Christian preacher, was that they were basically, him and this particular individual were selling this particular product, promoting this product over 11 different episodes. So it wasn't just a one-off, it was actually something which was apparently ongoing.
And then it boosts your immune system, so then you can support the recovery, because when you kill the virus, then the immune system comes into action to clear it out. So you want a vibrant immune system as well as an ability to deactivate these viruses.
That's so good.
What I want to share next is vital based on the clip I just showed you, because one of this preacher's defense attorneys was basically talking about how this is basically just a smear campaign by some people to get this particular professing Christian off of the airwaves. And he even went as far as to say that the individual never ever said or claimed that this was a cure for the virus. Now, the fact of the matter is, this is where it gets really interesting. I haven't been able to see any of those other 11 episodes which he and this woman were allegedly selling this particular product. But from the clip, all it seems like to me is if it's more of the same or that kind of stuff, if there were never any explicit statements that this would cure it, that clip kind of gives you enough insights from my vantage point to see that at best, they were being very deceptive and leading people on by the things that they were ultimately saying. If they were not trying to say this was a cure for the virus, then ultimately the fact of the matter is, I think that should have been explicitly made well known. Before we get into just the numbers and how many people were ultimately affected and what's ultimately happening since, I want you to realize that what I'm going to share next is actually quite interesting, because I saw this on this particular article, and it was talking about this organization was basically giving feedback and saying that this particular solution was ultimately not really even beneficial for individuals in the first place. And this article, as you can see here, talks about the solution has no benefit in the body apparently when ingested. So taking this solution doesn't even guarantee results apparently. And apparently ingesting some of these key ingredients can actually lead to serious side effects, such as turning the skin blue. Now, let's talk about the money. If you go back to that clip, I'll show it again, you can see that it talks about how they were offering this based on a public purchase or public donation of between $80 to $125. So it seems to suggest to us that everyone who was requesting this bottle of cure for the virus will ultimately have to pay at least $80. And here comes the big institute, which causes many people to fall into questionable situations. The Bible talks about how the love of money is the root, right, of all evil. So the love, the desire for money will cause and encourage people to do many very crazy things. And what I was able to gather from doing a little bit of research on the internet was, in a 1 month sequence early on in this whole situation, they were able to pull in about $90,000. So when I just did a rough calculation of that $90,000 divided by $100, which is between $80 and $125, that gets a number of about 870, right? 880. So about 880 people, based on my rough calculations, basically requested one of these bottles. Now, obviously, if you go to the website today to try and buy a bottle of this particular cure, you're not going to find it, and you're not going to be able to find any of these episodes where they were basically promoting this solution. The fact of the matter is, they were obviously sued multiple times, and they've come to a settlement in one of those lawsuits where they have to pay back $156,000. They're basically being commanded to basically pay back all of the money of the people which basically donated or paid for those solutions to be sent to them. He ultimately wants to continue as if nothing ultimately happened, even though that is 1,000+ people damaged by this particular situation, and the gospel has a bad stain on it. Now, the fact of the matter is, this is just like those presidential elections with loads of false prophecies and people trying to do the exact same thing. Falsely prophesy and then go on as if nothing ultimately happened. Watch more about that right here.